Hello and welcome to another edition of Yorkshire Kris Weekly. Coming up in today's episode, so we had our first good frost last week, so it was down to 0.0 degrees, which meant that all the colocasias, the summer bedding, all the foliage was destroyed by the frost, and everything else really stopped growing for the season now. So I will be covering over all the plants in this episode, and also thinking about protecting plants with shelters as well, like some of the tender palms. But right now you're probably thinking, why am I sitting in a hole? And that is because I'll be getting the Ensetes bananas that I dug up a couple of weeks ago. They've been in the garage, and I'll bring them into the house. So we had a really good second frost this week, and it went down to exactly 0, where everything was covered in frost. And as you can see, it's completely obliterated all the colocasias here, and the amaranthus behind. And it's the same on the other side as well. So everything now is over for this year, pretty much, in this part of the garden. And if we just walk around, more colocasias like that, and the dahlias, you hardly recognise, the selenium's all been browned off. It's time to tidy up all these beds, so that's what I'm doing today. And now I've flattened down all the foliage on the beds here. The next stage is to cover this area with a bit more straw. Basically the foliage here will be enough to insulate what's really important, which are the growths underground. So for instance, here, these are begonias, which will stay in over winter. Straw will go over the top of those. That's the Ensetes there. Again, straw will go over there. And the colocasias, loads of them here. They'll be fine as they are really, if it's just a mild winter. But I'm going to put some straw over these plants here. And all this foliage will act basically as insulation over winter, covering what's really important, which is the roots, the rhizomes, the bulbs, etc. underground. And that'll be enough to see these plants get through winter and grow next spring. And because these are raised beds, hidden raised beds, these about 20-30 centimetres above real soil level. It's really free draining soil here, so nothing will be sat in water over winter, which is a real killer of roots and are susceptible plants to rot. So because it's relatively dry, it shouldn't be a problem. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we don't have a really cold, long cold winter. If we don't, then these will be fine if it's just a normal or a mild winter. That's what I'll be doing with all these plants. So now it's time to deal with a large Heniba corm and the Montbéliardii. See, they've started to grow. These were cut 2 weeks ago out of the ground, and now I'm going to divide these and propagate them over winter to produce hundreds of new plants next year and the year beyond that. So I'm going to cut these with a clean saw into 4 parts. Put sulphur powder over these, stop infection and rot setting in, and then these are going to be brought into the house and kept warm, and hopefully over winter lots of little plants will start to grow. So that's what I'll do now. Now, one tip I will give you if you are doing the same thing is turn these upside down. So these are the leaf bases, these are soft and easy to cut through. This is a base, a central area where the corm is, where all the starches are, and this is pretty tough. It's better to tip it upside down and then cut down through the hard part before getting to the soft part. That way it's easier to do and you get a cleaner cut. So that's what I'll do now. So I've cut both into 4 quarters, which is quite hard work. They're very tough. The bases of these now, they're quite old. And the next job is to dust them in sulphur powder, and then I'll let them dry off for a day or two, and then I'll pot them up and bring them into the house. It's important that they do dry out just to avoid any rot setting in. Because obviously, as you can see, there's some soil's got into the cuts, on the surface of the cuts at least. So sulphur powder should hopefully kill off any bacteria, fungus that might want to grow, and prevent the rot setting in. And hopefully we'll have hundreds and hundreds of new plants next year. Fingers crossed. I have done this before, and I'll do a link to the videos in the corner right about now, and you can see how it worked in the past. Because the surface is freshly cut, it is wet and sticky, so the sulphur powder will stick to it, which is what I want it to do. That's all the surface of the corm covered. Now, one of the shelters I put together is this one here, the Latticectus palm, the Trachycarpus latticectus. It's basically just perspex, or polycarbonate I should say, polycarbonate on a couple of wooden stakes, and then just leaning against the fence, and then the palm tree is under there, nicely protected against the worst of the weather, so no snow, ice or rain can get in there, so they're kept relatively dry as well. And that's what it will stay like until probably April next year, March, April. And the fingers crossed that'll be enough protection to see this through the winter. I've done the same with the Gemini sectus there and the small Princeps palm. The Princeps is probably hardy, but as it's next to the Gemini sectus, I thought it was worth covering them both. And I'll also protect the Marchanus, which is actually looking completely fine at the moment. It's had a bit of fleece around the trunk, like that, to protect the roots and the base of the plant. And I'll chuck some fleece over it as well, and probably put a shelter over it, because that is not a hardy palm. -5, -6 is probably its limits. So we'll see how that goes on. We've had that for a few years now, which is probably on borrowed time, but it's a beautiful plant. I've enjoyed growing it and hope they'll get through winter. You may remember last week I covered up this Cyathea tree fern because of the frost that we had, and as you can see, no damage to the leaves yet, which is great because it went down to freezing, and as you've seen from other parts of the garden there were lots of damage, so this is doing pretty well. So I'll cover this up again for tonight because we're going to get another, hopefully, well, not hopefully, but we're looking like we're going to get a sharp frost again tonight. So we'll cover all these over. Now this is the ultra rare, at this size anyway, Trachycarpus aureophilus. It's not a hardy palm. I've already protected the base with some weed suppressing membrane, and I'll protect the top with a fleece bag over this soon, because it doesn't like temperatures below -2, -3 really. And then you get damage. You can see that older leaf, that's damage from last winter when it touched -5 for a few hours. So it doesn't really like low temps, so that will be protected. So I do want to ideally keep this palm because it is very rare, and it's pretty much irreplaceable at this size. And it's because it's got these such finely divided leaves, and it's a very handsome looking Trachycarpus palm, so we'll protect this one and try to keep it over winter in my Yorkshire garden. At the moment the leaves on this Tetrapanax rex have not been damaged by frost at all, and they are serving a purpose of protecting this Washingtonia robusta palm, which is underneath. You can see the trunk there and the leaves. So for now I will not protect this Washingtonia because it's getting overhead protection from the Tetrapanax papyrifera rex. So when the leaves blacken on this, I'll then protect the Washingtonia palm below. So a little update on the Selenium cuttings that I took several weeks ago now. As you can see, the leaves are nice and healthy, with the new leaves just about showing some new growth. And I'm very happy to report that underneath we have new roots. They're not very big, you can just see the white roots poking out there. So that is hopefully 3 successful cuttings which will grow into good plants for next year, as the parent plants now have been completely destroyed by the frost last week. So that's hopefully a good success story. So it's been exactly 2 weeks since I dug up these Ensetes and brought them into the garage after cleaning them off. And now they're going to go into their winter quarters, which is inside the house in the loft space. So I'll bring them into the house now and show you where they're going to be stored. So the weather for the forthcoming week looks to be cold again. We could get frosts, and we will get frost this week, but nothing scary, nothing like -3, -4 or lower. So it's just going to be sort of gentle frosts, quite a few mornings probably this week, because we're getting sort of northwesterly winds. So it's nothing extra needs to do in the garden in terms of protecting the musabajus or the tree ferns in particular, but like we mentioned earlier, everything else is pretty much either in the house, in the greenhouse, in the garage, or covered over in some way, shape or form in the garden. So I'm in this hole here, and this, if you come over here, is where I'm storing the onset bananas. So down here we have got, let's get this light, can you see here? These are the Ensete bananas, and we've got 4 spaced down here. If we look at this first one here, you can see it's got no soil, it's got no pot, and basically it's just resting on this cardboard, and it's resting against this wall, which is in basically the attic. If you just look up, that's the roof space we're in. They're the tiles just above that felt there, so it's not a warm place, there's no light at all. There is a bit of ventilation, there is a bit of a draft in this area, and each of these banana plants, these onsets, are just lined up in a row, and what we've got is a gap between each one, so that all these plants can have good ventilation around them. And these will stay here now for several months, probably till March time, when they'll start growing again, and I'll bring them out of their winter storage place. So that's the onset sorted for winter. And so this is my plant of the week, and it's Aloes striatula, also known as a sort of hardy aloe. It grows into a shrub, grows over 1 metre tall, lots of branches of these rosettes, these fleshy leaves. As you can see, they're not spiky at all like a lot of agaves, they're very soft really compared. Little teeth on there, but they won't cut your skin. But they're a really interesting succulent to grow, and not only do they look really exotic, in spring they have really bright orange yellow flowers that grow, and they produce every year from an established plant. And this plant will sort of, it can get a bit messy because the branches sometimes fall over and then carry on growing. But you can cut it back, and cuttings can be put in other parts of the garden or given away to friends, and it will keep growing from the cuttings, and the main plant will keep growing from the cut bases of the branches. So really exotic, interesting aloe to be grown in a UK garden.